Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to the revision lecture for BUS1BUE. Now bear in mind this lecture is going to recap all the key concepts that we have done in the semester. I won't be going into too much detail of each concept, otherwise we'll actually need 11 weeks times 2 hours. So it will be a brief, concise, condensed lecture that covers each and every topic which you could use for your revision purposes. So let us begin. So I'll begin with the production possibility frontier, and I'll show you how to draw each and every diagram as well as much as possible. So with the PPF, you got two axes, the X and the Y axis. And each axis shows us a particular product. So you'll have, let's say, product 1 on one of the axes, product 2 on the other axis. So to understand PPF, we need to also understand what is an opportunity cost and what is scarcity. So to begin, scarcity is that of resources. It could be scarcity of time. It could be a scarcity of money as well. Basically, it means that things are limited and they are not unlimited in the world. So because of the limitations to maybe your time, money, to resources, to your products, what arises is called a scarcity. Now, because of scarcity, many times we have to choose between two actions. It could be a purchasing action or it could be an act as well. For instance, if I have a scarcity of money, that means my finances, the money part is limited. In the given limited amount of money that I have, I will have to choose between buying two products. Now, some of you might say, well, can't you just buy two products? Yes, you could. But to understand the concepts, we show the PPF on which we demonstrate a curve that shows the choice between two products because of the scarcity. So because of limited sources or resources and because of limited money, if I start increasing the production of a particular product, I might have to decrease the production of the other product. So that is because of scarcity, and that limited choice or the options to produce are shown by this particular curve. So let us try to have a quick example and check out how this works. So let us assume that I'm producing a particular product at this quantity. So these are the quantities, okay? How the quantities in which you're producing product A and the quantity in which you're producing the other product. So let's say you are producing a particular product here and you're producing another product here, okay? So the PPF shows your production choice basically, okay? That's what it shows. So the maximum possible production is shown on the curve. Anything inside the curve is under production. Anything outside the curve is unachievable. Now, if I want to increase my production of product A, let's say I increase it, all right? So let's say I bring up the production here. So what am I doing? I'm increasing my production of product A. Let's check what happens now. As a result, see, I have to decrease my production of product B. So if one production goes up, the other production decreases. If the other one increases, the previous one would have to decrease. This happens because of a limited amount of money or the limited resources that you have. Put it simply, let us say, let's scale down the problem. Let's say you have $10. It takes you $2 to produce item A. So let's say to produce X, and takes you $3 to produce Y, okay? So what combinations could you make from these two? You could either make 5 products of X, isn't it? So you could use up all the money, all your $10 to produce X, or you could say you're producing 4 of 4 products of X. So that is possible as well. So that means you'll use up $8. Let us write down how much you will use up. So you're using up $8 here. You're using up your entire $10 in this case. Or you could say you're producing 3 products of X. And so that's $6, isn't it? 3 times 2 is 6. And in the remaining $4, you can produce 1 product of Y. So in total, you're spending $9, right? And so on. So this combination will keep going on and on and on. So what we see is if you're producing 5 of X, then you cannot produce Y. You don't have enough money. To produce something of Y, you need to reduce your production of X. Literally means to increase the production of one, you need to decrease the production of the other one. However, bear in mind, in this particular case, where you're producing 5 products of 10, you're using up all your $10. So that is the maximum you can produce. However, in this case, where you're producing 4 products of X, you're only using up $8. You're not utilizing the entire amount that you have. It means you are underproducing. The same goes over here. When you're producing 3 products of X and 1 product of Y, you are using up $9, not your entire $10. So that means you're underproducing. So on the curve, on this particular production possibility frontier diagram, what we could see is any point inside. So any point here. Okay, so that could be producing so much of amount of one product, so much of the other. So that is possible. This is doable, but then you are underproducing. Pick any point. You want to pick this point? Let's try this one out. You see, in this point, you are producing so many of product 2, so many of product 1, but again, you're underproducing. So the moral of the story is anything inside this curve is underproduction. Anything on the curve is the maximum production possible. So let's say on the curve is maximum production possible. Okay, so that's on the curve. And anything outside, so let's say you got a point over here, for instance, this point, this cannot be achieved in the given situation. So that's your production possibility frontier because of scarcity. Then comes the concept of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is what you give up in order to take up something else. So for instance, I want to watch 2 movies at the same time, but then obviously it is not possible because of scarcity. It could be scarcity of time or money. Let's say I want to watch the upcoming movie Mulan, and then I also want to watch, let's say, Wonder Woman 84. Let's say both release around the same time, and I got limited money, and I just want to watch one movie. So I would choose one over the other. So what I give up in order to do something else is my opportunity cost. So if I go and watch Mulan, the experience I would have got in watching Wonder Woman 84 would be my opportunity cost. Okay, so that's an opportunity cost. You could say that in case of education as well. So what could you be doing instead of attending university? Well, you could be working, or you could be resting at home. Or let's say, what could you be doing instead of watching this particular lecture? Instead of watching this lecture, you could be playing a game, you could be watching Netflix. So what you're giving up in order to do something else is your opportunity cost. So guys, this was all about PPF, production possibility frontier, scarcity, and opportunity cost. Hope this particular concept makes sense. Let's move on to the next topic. Now, on the previous diagram, I briefly said that there was a particular point that was not attainable. Let's quickly draw the diagram again. So initially I said that anything on the curve was maximum, if you remember that, and anything outside the curve was not achievable. That's what I told you in the previous one. Now the question is, how could we actually make this achievable? Can we make this point achievable? Can we actually reach this point? So that is called production possibility frontier bowing out, okay, or expanding outside. And this is only possible in most cases with the advancements of technology. So we could definitely reach this point only and only if we got better technology. So if there is, let's say there is product 1, okay, and there is product 2 over here, and you have understood what it means on based on the previous slide. So product 1 and product 2, if we get better technology, okay, for manufacturing, that helps product 1. So we got technology that assists product 1. What's going to happen is product 1 will probably bow out. So what I could do is I could expand this particular curve so it makes the explanation easier. Let's get it up to here. And I'll show you what bowing out means. This is what it means. Okay, to an extent. So what we have seen is now, without decreasing this particular product's production, we can increase product 1's production. Okay, if that makes sense. So what we did before, what I explained earlier on this diagram was, if I want to increase one, I got to decrease the other, isn't it? That's what I was saying before. But now that's not the case. With better technology, it is possible to increase one without decreasing the other. So what literally happens is, if this is your diagram, it would expand this way, okay? So you could increase one without affecting the other one. Now, the same could be done in different situations. So, for example, if this is your diagram, I'm going to do this quickly, okay? Let's say this is product 1 and product 2, and this is your regular curve, okay, PPF. If I get better technology to help me with product 1, what's going to happen is 2 remains the same, but 1 expands out. If I get better technology that's going to help me with product number 2, in that case 1 will stay the same, but I can actually get more of 2. So I can produce more of 2 without affecting 1. And what if I get that technology that's actually going to help me with both product 1 and 2? So product 1 and product 2 both are benefited by this technology. Then the curve will go out completely. It will bow out completely. And this particular point, which once upon a time I said was not achievable, now becomes achievable. So that is the role of technology, which is very important in bowing out the production possibility frontier. Moving on to the next topic. Let's talk about GDP. Now, GDP is gross domestic product. It is the total value of all the products and services produced within the country in a given frame of time. Now, we could calculate your gross domestic product based on income approach or expenditure approach. Now, what happens is, as far as income approach is concerned, it's all about everything that's incoming, okay? And expenditure approach is everything that is outgoing. Remember, income and expenditure should be equal in the economy, because what you're paying one person, if you're paying something to one person, that is your expenditure, isn't it? But for that person, that incoming money is actually their income. So what you are spending is somebody's income. What's going out of someone's pocket is going into someone's pocket. And that's why our income, whether we use income approach or whether we use expenditure approach, our GDP should be the same. Now, as far as expenditure approach is concerned, we got a fixed formula, and this is the one that we use for this particular course or most of the times. It is made up of C, it is made up of I, G, and NX. C stands for consumption, I stands for investments, G stands for government spending, and NX is actually net exports. Net, let's write it down. Net exports. So that is NX. So what is net exports? Let's quickly break that down. So NX is net exports. Net exports is exports minus imports. Okay, so that is your NX. C was consumption of everyone in the economy. I was investments by everyone in the economy. G was the spending that the government is doing on the economy, such as investing, sorry, not investing, actually spending on roads, infrastructure, spending on healthcare, spending on people. The stimulus package, which has been announced lately for the COVID-19 pandemic recovery, that stimulus package is also part of our government spending. And then comes the NX, of course. Now, bear in mind, this is what GDP is made up of. And many times, a lot of articles and magazines pay too much emphasis on GDP to understand the growth of the country or the standard of living in the country. What we need to understand is GDP is good. GDP actually gives us an indication of the economic activity in the country. So yes, definitely, higher the GDP, probably it's higher the consumption, probably it's higher investment, probably it's higher government spending. In most occasions, it is high exports compared to imports. But we should also remember consumption, the C part in the GDP, is pretty significant for most countries around the world. On an average, C is more than 50% of the entire GDP. So what we consume, what we spend is actually contributing to the GDP of the country. So next time you go for a shopping spree and somebody shames you, you tell them, don't shame me, I'm actually contributing to the GDP of the country. Well done. However, bear in mind, if you're actually buying products that are imported, you're not contributing to the GDP because that is going to get your net exports low. So higher the exports and lower the imports, the better it is for the GDP. And then, of course, your C, I, and G will also matter. Now, based on these two, based on the expenditure approach, let's quickly understand what is nominal GDP and what is real GDP. Nominal GDP is the GDP at the current given time. So you could say, what's the nominal GDP of Australia in 2019? If we are talking about the GDP of Australia in 2019, we will use the prices and the quantities in the country of that particular year. But real GDP is actually useful for comparison between 2 years. So if you're using real GDP, you could compare the GDP of Australia in 2019 with the GDP of Australia in, for example, 2010, because it will take into account inflation. So to conclude quickly, if you want to recap and understand the concepts, nominal GDP is at the current given time, and real GDP is adjusted to inflation. And why do we need to adjust to inflation? If we want to conduct a fair comparison. And why do we need a fair comparison? Take, for instance, movies. I love to watch movies. So movies example is pretty useful in this case. If you were to compare the total earnings, okay, the total box office of Gone with the Wind, okay, or one of the old James Bond 007 movies from the 60s against Daniel Craig's movie 007, the current one, which is upcoming. If you compare the box office for that one, you feel it's a fair comparison? Mostly not, because obviously back in the days, the production cost was different, the inflation was different. Movie tickets were probably a few cents or a few dollars, not $20, $25 as they are at the moment. So if we consider those factors, obviously the box office of the current movie is going to be way more compared to the box office of the older movie. So a fair comparison would be if we fix the prices as a base price, and for those prices we only take into account the quantities. So we would say, let's fix the production cost at a particular base year price, let's fix all the expenses at a particular level, let's fix the inflation at a level, let's in short fix the prices at a standard base year level, and only look at the ticketing sales. So how many tickets were sold? So that would give you a fair comparison of the box office of two movies. Similarly, when you're looking at the GDP of a country, we want to conduct a fair comparison, it's good to take into account the inflation in different years. So once you adjust to inflation, once you adjust to the prices of different years, you have a very fair comparison field, a fair platform to make the comparison. And based on that, you can know whether the GDP in a particular year was better compared to the GDP in the other year. So nominal GDP for current time, price and quantity is from that given year. Real GDP will have quantities of those particular years you want to compare. but the price will be that of the base year. Then you have CPI and inflation. CPI is Consumer Price Index. It is made up of basket of goods. Now, basket of good literally means, in theory, you could literally say, if you go for grocery shopping, everything that goes into your shopping trolley from Coles or Woolworths is your basket of goods. So when we compare the exact, let's say you buy exactly the same number of goods on visit one, and the exact same quantity, same goods in visit number two. Let's say your visit one was this year, and your visit to let's say your visit one is was early in January, and let's say your visit two is in May. So what we would do is we would compare how much it cost you for those two particular baskets. Now this is if you bought exactly the same items in this exact same quantities. That would give us an idea if the price level has increased. So CPI, Consumer Price Index, is simply the price of the new basket, so the new shopping that you have done, divided by the price of the older shopping that you did times 100. That would give you CPI. And once you got CPI, you go CPI new, so the new CPI that you calculate minus the older CPI that you calculate, divided by the older CPI, that would give you the inflation rate. So CPI is made up of the basket of goods. Basket of goods literally helps us to compare if the price levels have increased. Based on that, we understand CPI, which in turn helps us understand inflation in a country. To keep it simple, CPI and inflation help us understand if the price levels in a country at a given or between a period of time have increased or if they have decreased. So this was GDP for you. Now let's understand standard of living. Many times people try to relate GDP with the standard of living, which is simply incorrect. GDP is good to understand economic activity in the country. It's also good to understand trade and economic growth of a country. However, that is not enough. Well, it is a good indicator because more the economic activity in the country, more the employment, you could argue that, but and more the economic activity, more the employment, the more you could actually manufacture in the country, the more you could export as well. So that is a fair argument. However, that is not sufficient for understanding the standard of living. So for standard of living, we also have a better indicator, which is called the Human Development Index, in short called HDI. Now you can Google HDI rankings around the world. Australia is always has been in the top 10 with regards to HDI. Norway usually is the world number one for HDI. Now, if we simply compare the economy of Norway and the economy of China, for instance, or the economy of India, you will realize that the economy of Norway is minuscule. It is absolutely tiny. The GDP is a tiny dot compared to the GDP of China or the GDP of India. However, when it comes to HDI, their ranking is number one. So why is HDI different, and what is included in HDI that tells us the standard of living? Well, HDI is made up of three key factors, and those factors are GDP per capita. It tells us about the access and quality of education, and the third factor is the expected life expectancy at birth. Now, the expected life expectancy at birth helps us understand the healthcare and well-being in the country. The access and quality of education helps us understand the educational standards in the country, and GDP per capita. So this is nominal GDP per capita, not just GDP. So this GDP per capita means per person. It means the average GDP. So literally, it is the GDP that takes into account the population and tells us what is the contribution towards the GDP of each and every person. Or if we do the reverse part and we go for the income approach, GDP using income approach tells us the total income in the country, but GDP per capita helps us understand what is the average income of each person in the country. Imagine if there are just two people in a classroom and we are looking at the incomes of those two people, it will be much lesser compared to the income of everyone in a classroom of 200 people, isn't it? But the moment we take out the average, we might realize it would tell us a different story, that maybe people in the classroom with just 2 have a higher average. It could be the other way as well. So averaging things out help us get a better understanding of what is the contribution of each person, or um, what is the income of each person in the country. So GDP per capita gives us a better understanding of the standard of living. However, GDP by itself is not sufficient. So HDI, that is Human Development Index, takes into account nominal GDP per capita. It considers access and quality of education, and it looks at the average life expectancy at birth in that given country. So at any given point, you could argue that HDI is definitely a better indicator of the standard of living or well-being in a country compared to GDP. But that's not sufficient again, because there should be other factors that also contribute to the standard of living. Now, those could be pollution, because pollution affects our health, clean water access, sanitation, uh, less discrimination in education, more freedom of expression, that is freedom of speech, religion, press, and lifestyle, less inequality, having a good healthcare, having less war or no war, less crime, more stable government, less corruption or no corruption, traffic conditions, open spaces, nature. So these factors also contribute to the standard of living, which are not included in HDI and which are also not included in your GDP. So that is standard of living. Moving on, understanding what the workforce is. So when we look at the workforce, there is labor force, employment, unemployment. These are the key concepts that you need to know. Bear in mind, labor force is made up of people who are employed and unemployed. It does not have people who are underage, retired, hospitalized, disabled, or unable to work, or those who don't want to work. So if you're underage, if you're retired, if you're hospitalized or disabled and unable to work for genuine reasons, and if you just don't want to work, you can't be bothered, you're not a part of the labor force. Labor force is only made up of people who want to work, are willing to work, are capable of working, and are actively looking for employment. So labor force includes employed and unemployed people together. So unemployed people are also a part of the labor force. That is something you need to bear in mind, which brings me to the next part, and that is different types of unemployments. You have structural unemployment, frictional unemployment, cyclical unemployment, natural rate, and full employment. So let's quickly break these three main types of unemployments and then look at natural rate and full employment as well, which are based on the top three. So structural, for starters, literally means that your skill sets are not matching with the skill sets required by the organization. Frictional unemployment is temporary unemployment. Maybe you're between two jobs, maybe you're on a temporary holiday, or maybe your job is seasonal. So you know you're definitely working in the next season, but for the time being, you have no work. It could be because you got a promotion or you're getting a better offer from another company. You have quit the existing job and you're spending a few months before your new job begins. So that is frictional unemployment. It is temporary phase. Structural, as I said, is when your skill sets don't match. Coming to the third one, that is cyclical unemployment. The word cyclical comes from the term business cycle. That means there are peaks and troughs in an economy. Peaks when the economy is doing great, troughs when the economy is not doing that great. It's going through the worst time. And the economy goes to the worst time because of the overall recession or downturn in the economy around the world. There are loss of jobs. So those loss of jobs are called come under cyclical unemployment. Another easier, a very, very easy way of understanding cyclical unemployment is simply when you look at understand the concept of demand and supply. Let's say there are more people looking for jobs compared to the number of jobs available. The unemployment that arises is called cyclical unemployment. To scale the problem down, let's say there are 10 people looking for jobs and there are only 6 jobs available. It's not the 4 people who are left out are going to be unemployed. It's not because it's temporary. It's not because they are not skilled. It's nothing to do with their knowledge and education. It is simply because there aren't enough jobs available in the economy. So when you face that situation where there is a shortage of jobs, we say it is cyclical unemployment. Natural rate of unemployment is basically the addition of structural and frictional unemployment. So add your structural unemployment, add your frictional unemployment together, what you get is called the natural rate of unemployment. We say in economics that an economy or a country has reached full employment, not if everyone is employed. It is only if there is no cyclical unemployment. So there could be frictional unemployment, there could be structural unemployment, but whoever is unemployed in the country is either because their skills are not matching or because it's temporary. It is not because of a shortage. So as far as you don't have shortage of jobs in the country, you would say you have attained full employment. Moving on. Let's look at a few diagrams based on demand and supply, and I'll draw those diagrams for you as well at the appropriate time. So now let's look at the law of demand and supply. Law of demand states that other things remaining the same, higher the price of the good, the smaller the quantity demanded, and lower the price of the good, the larger the quantity demanded. What is very important to understand in this particular definition is that, and let me highlight that for you as well, it is quantity demanded that we talk about. Please don't say smaller, the higher the price, smaller the demand. It's not smaller demand, it is smaller quantity demanded, because there is a difference between quantity demanded and demand itself. There is a difference between quantity supplied and supply. So these terms are not the same. So you need to be very careful. So always remember, in the definition, it is quantity demanded, and the other important part is other things remaining the same. So other things have to remain constant, they should not change. And then if the prices increase, the quantity demanded decreases and vice versa. Now, the same could be said for supply, but it is a direct relation. That means, again, you have other things remaining the same, and we're going to talk about quantity supplied, not just supply. So what's the definition? Other things remaining the same, the higher the price of a good, the greater is the quantity supplied, and lower the price of the good, the smaller is the quantity supplied. So that is the law of demand and supply. Now let's have a quick look at the change in quantity demanded. Remember, quantity demanded is to do with the price of the particular product or service we are referring to. So for instance, if the price of ice cream increases, the quantity for ice creams demanded is going to decrease. So let's have a quick look at two examples. Let's say the price of an ice cream is $1. That is here. Let's draw that again. Let's say the price is $1. What's the quantity demanded going to be? So go on the curve over here, come down, the quantity is going to be 8. Okay, this is just an example. Let's say the price increases. Let's say it goes to $2. Now let's see what happens to the quantity demanded. It decreases. Okay, so this is called a decrease in the quantity when the prices increase. This is your demand curve. It is a downward sloping curve. And all the points on the curve actually show the different quantities or the different demand decisions taken by people, taken by consumers. So this is purely from a customer or a consumer's point of view, not a producer's point of view. A producer's curve is the supply curve. So this curve is purely, they'll just name it, this is the demand curve. It is representing the consumers, okay? And bear in mind, everything else remains the same. So there are no external factors. So we are not talking about change in the ice cream flavor, or we are not talking about change in the size of the ice cream or change in the brand of the ice cream. Everything has to be the same. So when we are saying $1 ice cream and $2 for the ice cream, we are saying it is the same company, same brand, same packaging, same location, same flavor, same size. Everything is exactly the same. And if every single thing is exactly the same and you increase your price, only then the quantity demanded will decrease. So that's how that's called quantity demanded. It is shown by a movement along the curve. So when you're trying to show a change in quantity demanded, okay, that is changes in quantities over here, different quantities, it's actually coming off the curve. So this is called a movement along the curve. Similarly, we can explain the quantity supplied for on a supply curve. So you could say, and this is from a seller's point of view. Okay, once again, like I said, the demand curve showed the consumer, the supply curve is going to show the producer or the supplier. So from a supplier's point of view, the higher the price, the more revenue they would earn. So as the prices increase, in case of a supply, higher the prices, more the quantity supplied. Remember, it is the quantity that we're talking about. Please don't say the supply increases, just say the quantity supplied increases. So when prices increase, quantity supplied also increases. This is also shown by a movement along the curve from one point to another point. This is a movement along the curve, okay? And bear in mind, again, it is when everything else remains the same. So when we are saying an increase in the price of the ice cream, it is the same size, same brand, same flavor, same location, everything same for that ice cream. If any of that is different, then we talk about supply. But if everything is the same and then prices change, then it is the quantity supplied that we are talking about. And it is shown on the same curve. You don't shift your curve anyway. It is just a movement along the same curve. However, when do we say, so what we just saw was quantity demanded and quantity supplied. That is different to demand and supply. So we would say there is a change in demand if something other than the price of that particular product or service changes. So what could that something else be? It could be the price of a substitute or a complement. It could be an expected future price. It could be your income. It could be expected future income and credit. It could be the population. For instance, if the number of people increase who like that particular product, the demand is going to increase as well. And preferences or taste as well. So the new marble, Cadbury marble chocolate that everyone was looking forward to has a little different recipe. Many people are complaining that it tastes a bit nuttier than what it used to be before. So people are not enjoying the taste as much as they used to in the past. So when it comes to taste, the demand for this particular Cadbury marble is going to decrease, you see? So that is called change in demand. Now, I'll quickly draw a diagram for you, and through that diagram, let us understand what a change in demand is represented by on a graph. So you can follow my drawing. This is my demand curve, and here comes my supply curve. Let's name them demand and supply. This particular axis, the y-axis is P for price, the x-axis is Q for quantity or output, either is fine, okay? The point where these two meet is called the equilibrium point. Equilibrium point shows an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity. Bear in mind, it is not price and quantity. It is equilibrium price. This is not your regular price. This is equilibrium price. And this is equilibrium quantity. And these two are hypothetical situations where the market clears. It means equilibrium price is an ideal price and equilibrium is an ideal quantity. So once you are fixing your price at this ideal price and selling only ideal quantity, there is no shortage or no surplus in the market. Now, in this situation, we are looking at a change in demand. So let's say the population of the country increases, or probably there is an advertisement that is very attractive and people really feel they should buy that particular product. It means the demand is going to increase for that product. That means things are favorable. So in cases where the situation is favorable for that particular product, it's based on one of these reasons that I've given on the side, you would have an increase in the demand. Now, bear in mind, an increase in demand is always shown by a shift in the curve to the right. A decrease is always shown by a shift in the curve to the left. So let's say that the population of a country increases, or they watch an advertisement by a celebrity and now everybody wants to buy that product. It's good for that business, it's good. So the demand is going to increase, which is going to be shown by a shift in the demand curve to the right, okay? So this right shift is going to take place, and let's call this D1 or D new. It's up to you what you like to call it. We will end up having a new equilibrium point and we'll also end up having a new equilibrium price and a new equilibrium quantity. Remember, this is not your price and quantity, so please don't say prices will increase. Prices depend on what the seller decides. This is the equilibrium price that will increase, and here it is the equilibrium quantity that will also increase if the demand increases. Okay, so that's a shift in the demand curve to the right. The other situation is if the things are unfavorable. So let's say there is an advertisement that people don't like, or one of the celebrities endorsing the product ends up saying something controversial, or you realize that the practices in that company are unethical, they are using child labor, or the product is having certain chemicals that are not good for you. It's anything to do that causes a negative publicity apart from change in price, then the demand is going to decrease. And remember what happens when demand decreases? The demand curve will shift to the left. So remember to use the word shift for demand changes in demand. So this is a shift to the left, and let us write that as your new demand. So that's D1, and then here we go, this becomes your new equilibrium price, and this becomes the new equilibrium quantity. Let's write it down. New equilibrium price has decreased, and new equilibrium quantity has also decreased. So that is a change in demand. It is shown by a shift to the right if it's an increase in demand, and it's shown by a shift to the left if there is a decrease in demand. Let us move on. Now, similarly, I'm going to show you what's a change in how a change in supply is demonstrated through a diagram. So let's draw another X and Y axis and another diagram that showcases a change in your supply curve. Bear in mind, if you're ever confused whether it's the change in demand or if it's a change in supply, ask yourself who is affected. Is it the customer who is affected by the decision, or is it the producer who is affected by the decision? Whoever is affected first is the curve that you should move. So if you So if you feel that it is the consumer that is affected, then you're shifting the demand curve. If you feel it is the producer that is affected, then you should be shifting the supply curve. So equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. Please don't write P and Q. This is equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity, and I've already explained what it means. This is your demand curve and your supply curve. So now let's have a look at what happens when supply increases and supply decreases. If supply increases, there is a shift in the supply curve to the right. If supply decreases, there is a shift in the supply curve to the left. It could be based on the state of nature, technology, number of suppliers, expected future prices, or prices of factors of production. So let's say you're producing shoes and the price of leather, let's say you produce leather shoes and the price of leather increases, then it's going to cost you more to manufacture those shoes. Or let's say labor prices increase and you have to pay more to people working in your manufacturing plant or unit. If your cost of production increases, then it means because of the factors of production, it is going to be more expensive for you to produce that particular item, which is not a favorable situation. Let's talk about another unfavorable situation. Let's say there is a storm or a flood or bushfires. We saw bushfires in Australia, which were very sad and unfortunate, affected a lot of suppliers, didn't they? So such tragedies could actually cause a very unfavorable situation for the businesses. Remember, if anything is unfavorable for the business, that is apart from price, then your supply will decrease. And if supply decreases, the supply curve will shift to the left. So this is a decrease in the supply because I'm shifting the supply curve to the left owing to unfavorable conditions. So this is my new supply curve. As a result, I got a new equilibrium point. So there'll be changes in the equilibrium price and there'll be changes in equilibrium quantity as well. So equilibrium price will increase, but equilibrium quantity will decrease. Okay, So this is your diagram that shows a decrease in supply. Similarly, we could have a increase in supply as well. So let's have a quick look at an increase in supply. An increase in supply if things are favorable for the producers. So it could be lower cost of production. It could be getting access to better technology. So that is also helpful. It could be just more number of suppliers entering the market. Okay, so this is your equilibrium point. Shouldn't be so thick, but anyway. Your equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So let's write those down as well. This is P and this is equilibrium price. This is Q for quantity or output. This is your equilibrium quantity. So what happens if supply increases? Its things are favorable. The supply curve will shift to the right. So this is my new supply curve. It has shifted to the right. That means it has increased. Now I have a new equilibrium point, and corresponding to that point, I got new equilibrium price and new equilibrium quantity as well. So this is my new equilibrium price. It has decreased, and my new equilibrium quantity, which has increased. So that is your change in supply. Remember to use the word shift. If supply increases, the supply curve will shift to the right. If supply decreases, the supply curve will shift to the left. And that will cause a corresponding change in equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Let's move on, everyone. Now let's talk about economic growth. So remember, I was talking earlier about growth in a country and economic activity of a particular country, and we spoke about GDP and how GDP could not measure standard of living, but we did say GDP does show the economic activity and how well the country is doing. You see, if we are looking at economic growth of a country, just the GDP increasing is not enough. We have to ask ourselves, how do factors in that make up the GDP, how do those factors increase? For instance, what I mean to say is just GDP growth does not show an essential or does not demonstrate the actual growth in a country. It's because the consumption is increasing, or it's because investments are increasing, or it's because the government spending is increasing, or maybe the gap between exports and imports is decreasing, or there are more exports and less imports. But how is all of that possible? I mean, how can we get more exports? That is if we manufacture more, but how can we manufacture more? Isn't that a question? We could simply say consumption in a country could increase and that would increase the GDP. But the basic question is, how would someone consume more? I mean, why would you buy more products? Why would the consumption in a country just increase? It won't increase just like that. So a consumption, for example, would increase if you're better off, if you got more income, more savings. That is possible if your workplace is actually giving you a promotion or paying you more, which is possible if your owner is able to manage their profits despite all the costs that are incurring to the business. And that is possible if they can decrease their cost of production and produce more efficiently. And that efficient production is possible if you have better human capital or better technology. So what we are going to look at is these four factors that actually contribute and help us increase C, I, G, and NX, which in turn helps us increase the GDP of a country. So these are the prime factors that are essential for the economic growth of any country. The first one is physical capital. That literally means you having more people working for you, or having more machinery, having more physical locations of manufacturing, having more manufacturing outlets, for instance. That is called physical capital. So you could increase that. Within a factory, instead of having one production line, you could have 2 or 3 production lines. You could increase those. So that increment in physical capital actually helps with the economic growth as well. Next is human capital. Human capital does not mean number of people. The number of people is actually a part of physical capital. So human capital means the skills, knowledge, and talent that people have, the education that they have. So if you want to increase human capital, you got to have happier people who are working more efficiently. You need to motivate them more. You got to upskill them, give them opportunities of increasing their skills, getting education, increase the educational standard in the country, hire people with more experience, or expose people to areas where they can get more exposure and they can become more skilled and more talented. So that is working on human capital to increase the economic growth of the country. Then you got resources, have access to more resources. Now, some of you might argue that natural resources are limited. That is correct. But then we could also create cleaner resources. So you can have wind turbines and create wind energy. You can have hydroelectricity. You have solar panels. You have wave energy as well. So we have technologies that are increasing, that are helping us actually harness those resources that are not harming the environment and which are not exhaustive either, which are pretty much unlimited. That brings me to the next point, that is technology. Having better technology makes things more efficient and it makes things more productive as well. So the production in a manufacturing plant would be much better. The efficiency rate, the productivity rate in that particular company would be way higher if they have access to better technology. Let us now move on to a topic that many find a bit difficult to understand, and that is elasticity. Well, these are a few points that I will be covering in this topic of elasticity. That is, what is an elastic good? What is an inelastic good? What is perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic? What is unit elastic? And then a few calculations, that is price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, income elasticity of demand, and then what is a normal good and what is an inferior good. So let us simply start with elasticity. Elasticity literally means the responsiveness of people's choices to changes in price. To keep it very simple, if you go back to the law of demand and supply, we did say that if everything remains the same and prices increase, then the quantity demanded will decrease. But my question is, by how much will it decrease? Will it decrease a lot? Or will it decrease a little bit? So that part where we understand whether the change in quantity is a lot or is it less is shown by elasticity. To keep it simple, a market that is an elastic market or a product that has an elastic demand to it is one where people are highly responsive to changes in price. People are very sensitive to changes in price. It means if the price changes, the response that people give will be much higher than the response people would give for a product that is inelastic. So let's say you're operating in an elastic market and you increase your price, then you're bound to lose a lot of customers. However, the opposite is true for an inelastic market. That's where people are less responsive or less price sensitive. So let's say you increase your price in an inelastic market, then definitely, according to the law of demand, you're bound to lose customers, but you will not lose many customers. You will lose very, very few customers. So that's the difference between elastic and inelastic. Elastic is where market is very price sensitive and people react a lot to change in price. In an inelastic market, people are less sensitive to price. I'm not saying they're not sensitive. They are, of course, but they're less sensitive, less responsive to changes in price. Now, why does that happen? Why in one market that is an elastic market, people react more? And why is it that in an inelastic market, people react less? Well, the answer is very simple. In an inelastic market, you have a lot of options to choose from. You have a lot of competition, a lot of rivalry, a lot of competitors and a lot of substitutes as well. So competition is if you're in the same, if you're selling the same product, but if it's a different a business selling that product. Substitute is if you're going for something else altogether. So for instance, if I'm buying bread, then all those bread companies that you see on the shelves of Coles are all competitors. They're rivals with each other. But a substitute to bread could probably be a gluten-free bread. Okay, so not your regular bread, or maybe not having bread at all, having a wrap, instead, or having a muffin instead of bread. So that's a substitute. Milk. If you look at milk, for instance, competition or rivalry is all those brands of milk that you see in the shelves of Coles and Woolworths and Aldi and IGA. But substitute for milk would be, well, fruit juice maybe. It could be ready-made tea, coffee, or it simply could be having soy milk or coconut milk instead of regular milk. So that is called substitutes. Regardless, in an elastic market, you have a lot of substitutes and you have a lot of competition and rivalry, due to which it's easy for people to change the product or go for someone else in case there is a change in price. In an inelastic market, there is less competition, less availability of substitute products. So people are kind of stuck with that particular product that they're buying because there isn't much to choose from. And that's why even if prices change, people are less responsive to changes in those price, because where will they go? The choices are limited. Sometimes it's the brand loyalty that makes the market inelastic as well. So think about, I mean, all of you could think about a particular product or service that you're very loyal to, and you will not change it no matter what the price changes. In that case, you're looking at an inelastic demand for that particular product. A perfectly elastic and perfectly inelastic product are two different ends of the spectrum, which I will explain to you based on a diagram very soon. Unit elastic is basically an answer that we get through calculations. Unit elastic means that the change in price and the change in quantity is proportionate to each other. They are in the same ratio. So it's easy to explain through a diagram, which I'll do very soon, but to keep it simple, in an elastic market, let's say I change the price by $2, I will have a change in customers, the percentage change in customers will also be 2%. I take that back, actually. That's for unit elastic. Let me put it this way. Okay, let's use this unit elastic example all over again. So in an elastic market, let's say the percentage change in price is 2%, then the percentage change in quantity will be more than 2. It'll be 3, 4, 5%. In an inelastic market, if the percentage change in price is, let's say, 2%, the percentage change in quantity will be less than that, will be less than 2. So it could be 1%. In a unit elastic market, the percentage change in price is the same as the percentage change in quantity. And that's why I was saying before how they are proportionate to each other. They are same to each other, but it's not, because price and quantity are two different things. We have to look at the percentage change in those two and compare if one is more than the other, if one is less than the other, or both are the same. All of this will make perfect sense to you because this was just conceptual understanding. If we look at the formulae, if we look at the calculations, and if we also look at the curves. So to bear in mind, for starters, if we are looking at an elastic market, okay, so let's look at an elastic market first. Let me draw a diagram for an elastic market. This is your regular P and Q. I'm not going to bother labeling it now, okay? I'm going to draw a demand curve for you. So this is your usual demand curve, isn't it? I'm not going to draw it this way. An elastic demand curve is flatter. So it's flatter. So this is your regular one. The elastic one is flatter like this. This is your regular supply curve, isn't it? But an elastic supply curve is flatter. See how I'm flattening it? So it is flatter, okay? So this is your demand, and this is your supply in an elastic market. And you know what elastic market is now, conceptually. But if you draw a diagram, the curves are flatter. Now, similarly, if we were to look at the inelastic market, let's draw our demand and supply again. This is your regular demand curve, isn't it? In an inelastic market, it's going to be steeper, okay? So this is your regular supply curve. The elastic one was flatter like this. The regular one is like this. Elastic one was flatter, flatter, flatter. Now I'm talking about inelastic, so it's going to be steeper. See how I'm making it steeper? So it goes steeper, okay? So that's your inelastic market. This is your demand curve, and this is your supply curve in an inelastic market. When it comes to unit elastic, it's going to be perfect 145 degrees. just 45 degrees, sorry, not 145. Don't know why I said that. So 45 degrees like this. So that's going to be your demand curve, and this is going to be your supply curve. Okay, so once again, have a look at it visually, guys. Unit elastic is where the curve is 45 degrees. Elastic is flatter than that, like this. Inelastic is steeper, like this. But this is unit elastic. Similarly, for a supply curve, a unit elastic supply curve is at 45 degrees like this. That is unit elastic. If it's elastic, it is flatter, 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 like that. If it's inelastic, it is steeper, like this. Okay, so the steeper it is, the more inelastic. The flatter it is, the more elastic it is. However, if it's in the middle, if it's at 45 degrees, it is unit elastic. So that's the concept, and these are the diagrams that you need to know. Now let's move on with the actual calculation, because these three parts, price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, and income elasticity of demand, are actually calculations which will help us understand whether something is elastic, inelastic, or unit elastic. Okay, these two concepts will be covered right at the end. So right now, how do we know if something is elastic? We can tell it through theory. We can simply say, well, a market where people react a lot, a market where people are very price sensitive, it's a market where there are a lot of options to choose from, a lot of variety, a lot of competition. You could also argue that your curve is flatter in nature. So these all could be arguments, but still it is subject to what each person perceives things, isn't it? It's not something that could definitely tell us whether a market is elastic or not. And for that, we need to conduct calculations based on numbers. Without those calculations, it's not possible to know if something is elastic or inelastic. So here is the formula. Price elasticity of demand is percentage change. This triangle means change. A percentage change in quantity demanded divided by a percentage change in price. So if you are good with math, you can continue with that formula, or let me break it down for you. So what is percentage change in quantity demanded? It is Q2 minus Q1 divided by the average. So this is the midpoint formula, times 100. Divide the whole thing by the change in price, that is P2 minus P1, divided by the average price, times 100. If you simplify it, you'll see 100 gets cancelled off, and the denominator becomes the numerator by flipping this part at the top. So in short, you substitute. I'm going to rewrite, I'm going to rearrange what's over here. So that becomes Q2 minus Q1 times 2 over Q1 plus Q2, and so on. I'm going to get rid of the common numerator denominator and rearrange everything into this formula. So those of you who are good with math, you can see how the final formula is derived. Some of you could choose to use this formula over here, that is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Feel free to use this. It's the same. It's the same formula. These two are the same. It's just written in a different way. So you can use whatever suits you, whatever you find easy to understand. So either use this or use P1 plus P2 over Q1 plus Q2 times Q2 minus Q1 over P2 minus P1. Either is going to give you the same answer. So this is your price elasticity of demand. Also bear in mind that when you're going for price elasticity of demand, because your demand curve is downward sloping, so this is your downward sloping demand curve, isn't it? Your answer will always be negative. So it's very important that when you're calculating your price elasticity of demand, at the end, get rid of the negative sign. Okay, write it as a positive answer. The same goes, not the same, it's different for price elasticity of supply. Your supply curve is an upward curve, isn't it? So for a supply calculation, your answer will always be positive. So you don't have to worry about positive or negative when it comes to price elasticity of supply. You only have to worry about price elasticity of demand. your answer will always be negative. So get rid of the minus sign, okay? And that always negative answer is because the demand curve is downward sloping. Lastly, when you're calculating income elasticity of demand, you're basically replacing the P with an I. So if I'm calculating income, I'm just replacing all the P's with an I, because we're not looking at price, we're looking at income. So just change all the P with an I, that's it, okay? So that's for income elasticity of demand. In this, you've got to retain the sign, whether it's plus, whether it's minus, or it's plus, you've got to retain it, because if your answer is negative for income elasticity of demand, the product is an inferior product. And if your answer is a positive number, your product is a normal good. Now, inferior and normal is very easy to understand. You see, if your income increases, what's the standard logic? The more you earn, the more you will buy. But sometimes, the more you earn, you would end up buying less of a particular product because you want to go for a better product. That product you were buying before was probably because you had budgetary constraints, or it was a compromise. So if you get better off, if you get richer, and instead of buying more of a particular product, you end up buying less of that product, you would say that product is an inferior good. But if your income increases, you get better off and richer, and you buy more of a particular product just because you got more money and you can buy more of it now, it is a normal product. But once again, this is all subjective, so it's difficult to understand. If you throw in numbers and do the calculations, you'll definitely know if something is inferior or normal. A negative answer shows it's an inferior product. A positive answer shows that it's a normal product. But this is for income elasticity of demand, not for price elasticity of demand, okay? Keep that in mind, because for price elasticity of demand, your answer will always be negative, and we don't want that. It's because demand curve is downward sloping. So bear in mind, here you neglect the sign, okay? And you find, you check what your answer is. Now, once you do all these calculations, okay, whatever answer you get, let me clear this. Let me write it down for you. So whatever answer you get, if that answer is greater than 1, then it is an elastic product. If your answer is greater than 1, it is an elastic product, okay? If your answer, let's get rid of this. If your answer, so whatever you calculate, I'll just do it here for you. So whatever you calculate, okay, here, whatever this comes up to be, if that is less than 1, then it is inelastic, okay? And it is inelastic. And if this particular answer is equal to 1, then it is unit elastic. So now, based on all of these, what do we know? Let's go back a slide. We know what is elastic. In theory, we know how the curve should be, and we also know what the calculation should, what answer the calculation should give us. We know what is inelastic. We know it is when you have less options to choose from, when people are less responsive to changes in price. We know the curves should be steeper, and we know your answer after the calculations should be less than 1. So now let's have a look at an actual example. So I've done a few examples for you. I'll come to those. Before that, as I said before, I'll quickly go through what is perfectly inelastic and what is perfectly elastic with you as well. So remember how I said if it's inelastic, it is steeper. Imagine it gets steeper, 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 so steep that literally, let me draw that again. So let's say this is your supply curve, okay? Demand, let's say this is your demand curve, for instance, D. Demand curve goes steeper, 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 steeper. See how I'm changing it? Becomes so steep that it is a straight line. Then it's called perfectly inelastic, okay? Similarly, if your demand curve is flatter, I told you it is elastic, right? Imagine it goes flatter, 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 so flat that it is a flat line. Then it is perfectly elastic in nature. But what is the meaning of this? It literally means when you are having a perfectly inelastic demand, the quantity demanded does not react to the change in price at all. So the price could be here. The quantity demanded is still going to be here. Let's say the price drops, it comes here, still the quantity demanded is going to be the same. So people will not react to price at all in a perfectly inelastic demand. Bear that in mind. As far as perfectly elastic demand is concerned, people buy the product at only and only one price. If that price changes, no one is going to buy the product. So for instance, the price is only going to be here. That's going to be the only price. So at that price, people will buy this quantity, people will buy this quantity, people could buy this quantity, but only and only at this price. The moment I change the price, there is no demand at all. Okay, no quantity demanded, zero. So people will only react to one price, nothing else. So these are extreme ends. Obviously, these are not real world examples. They're hypothetical to understand what are the extreme conditions in the market. So one extreme is perfectly inelastic. The other extreme is perfectly elastic. Now let's do the calculations. Let's quickly have a revision for all the calculations. So I've given 4 examples which will help you understand the concepts of the calculation part for price elasticity of demand, supply, and income elasticity of demand. So let's go through the questions together. The first example on the left top side is a pizza was $20.50 and 9 pizzas were consumed in 1 hour when that was the price. When the pizza price was decreased to $19.50, 11 pizzas were consumed. So here we are going to calculate the price elasticity of demand. We use the formula P1 plus P2, that is price 1 plus price 2. P1 means older price, P2 means new price, over Q1 plus Q2, that is quantities, times Q2 minus Q1 divided by P2 minus P1. So throw in the numbers. You can pause the video and have a look how I've done the calculation. My answer will be -4, but remember what I said, when it comes to price elasticity of demand, because the demand curve is downward sloping, the answer will always be negative. So let's get rid of that minus sign and write 4 as it is. 4 is greater than 1. Remember what I said, if your answer is greater than 1, the product is elastic. So similarly, let's look at the second example here. Calculate the price elasticity of supply. So in this case, the price of bananas were $3 and 20,000 bananas were sold per month. Because we are talking of supply, we are talking about what was sold, not what was consumed. In 2016, the price increased to $4 and 21,000 bananas were sold. Calculate the price elasticity of supply. Once again, P1, P represents price, Q represents quantity. Check the formula. Throw in the numbers, so P1, P2, all the prices, all the quantities. Have a look at the calculation one at a time in your free time. You can pause the video and have a look at it. Basically, at the end, your answer will be 0.17. Remember what I said, if it's greater than 1, it is elastic. If it's less than 1, it is inelastic. So in this case, 0.17 is less than 1, so the product is an inelastic product. And already you know what inelastic means in theory. Let's look at the third question. Here we are going to calculate income elasticity of demand. So now we are not going to talk about price. We are going to talk about how the quantity demanded reacts to a change in income instead of a change in price. So in 2015, someone's income, or this person's income, was $50,000, and Ingrid used to buy 35 cartons of Coles home brand milk. In 2016, income increased to 55,000, and now Ingrid is consuming 25 cartons of home brand milk. Check what's the income elasticity of demand and tell me what's the type of good. So here, once again, we throw in the incomes, the I's. I stands for income, so that is 50,000 and 55,000. The quantities are 35 cartons of milk and 25 cartons of milk. Throw in the numbers, look at the formula. You can pause the video if you're doing it along with me. and at the end you will see you get a negative answer. It is minus 3.5. Bear in mind, for income elasticity of demand, all we need to find out is whether the product is inferior or a normal product. If your answer is negative, it is an inferior product. The second example over here at the right bottom of the page shows a similar situation with different numbers where you get a positive answer. If you get a positive answer, the product is a normal good. So these four examples should help you understand the actual calculation part of price elasticity of demand, price elasticity of supply, income elasticity of demand for both normal and inferior good. So in conclusion, if the answer for income elasticity of demand is positive, it's a normal good. If the answer is negative, it's an inferior good. For price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply, if your answer is greater than 1, it is an elastic good, and if your answer is less than 1, it is an inelastic good. Moving on to the next topic. A few formulae for different curves. I will be showing you a few curves later on, but let's understand a few concepts of formulae before we move on to those curves. So TFC is your total fixed cost. It is the addition of all the fixed costs together. A fixed cost is a cost that has incurred at the beginning. It's not fluctuating. Many times it is a startup major cost, but sometimes it could be ongoing, but it does not change. It is fixed. So other operational variables don't affect this particular cost. So if you're buying if you want to start a restaurant or a cafe business, you'll have to buy the location first. You'll have to pay your registration and licensing fees. You'll have to buy all the interior, all the furniture inside, the tables and chairs and kitchen equipment. Now you don't have to buy these on a regular basis. It's a one-off buying purchase that you have to make. So those costs will be your fixed cost. Adding all your fixed costs together gives you your total fixed cost. So that's TFC. Then you got total variable cost. That is the addition of all the variable costs. These are costs that will change based on your operations and the number of outputs that you have produced. For example, if you hire more staff on a particular day, the wages that you have to pay those staff will increase. If you serve more dishes on a particular day, the cost for creating those dishes will increase for that particular day. So these things fluctuate. They are variable costs. Adding all the variable costs together gives you total variable cost. Adding your fixed cost and variable cost together, so adding these two, total fixed cost and total variable cost, gives you your total cost over here. Then we have average total cost, that is total cost divided by the output. Remember, in economics, we use the word output or quantity interchangeably. So please don't write O for output, just write the standard Q. Q represents output or quantity, it's the same thing. So ATC is average total cost, it is total cost divided by output. Then you got marginal marginal product actually. Marginal product is output divided by input. Total revenue is price times quantity. Your profit is total revenue minus total cost. Now you know already what total revenue is. It's here. And you know what total cost is. That's given over here. So your profit is total revenue minus total cost. And then we got marginal revenue. Marginal is the change in total revenue divided by the change in output. So you have to look by how much is your total revenue changing. If I earned $100 in a particular week, then I earned 200, then I earned 300, or let's say I earned 310, okay? Total revenue is change, marginal revenue is change in total revenue. So that is, what's the change between these two? It's a change of 100. What's the change over here? It's 110. So it's a change in your total revenue divided by the change in output. So let's say I earned 100 by selling 5 dishes. I earned 200 by selling 10 dishes, and then I earned 310 by selling 14 dishes. So it is change in total revenue here divided by change in output. So by how much did my output change? It changed by 5. And here, how much did my output change? It changed by 4. So my marginal revenue will be 100 divided by 5, and my second marginal revenue will be 110 divided by 4. Then you got average revenue, that is your total revenue divided by output. You got marginal cost, which is the change in total cost divided by change in output. So that's similar to this, but instead of revenue, we are looking at the cost for each output. So how much did your cost change with respect to your output? So marginal cost is change in total cost divided by change in output. Average variable cost is total variable cost over quantity, and average fixed cost is total fixed cost over the output. Just a quick reminder, everyone, this is just a revision recap lecture, so my intention is not to explain everything in detail. It is just to recap all the concepts. Now moving on to how the curves would look. So on the previous slide, you saw how they're calculated, but how do they actually look? So remember, your marginal cost curve it goes down first and then it goes up. It's like a Nike tick mark. Your average variable cost goes down, but then it goes up again. Same with ATC. The only difference is MC goes down and goes up sharply. ATC and AVC are very similar to a U-shaped curve. Your average fixed cost is a curve that goes downwards. Now, you could, if you ever see three curves like this and you're asked to guess which one is what, remember the one that is stable, the one that is a flat line that is not fluctuating, because it is constant, it has to be fixed. Hence, it is a total fixed cost. The ones that vary have to be total variable cost. Now, between these two curves, how do you know if the one here is total variable or the one here is total variable? Well, obviously, the total cost has to be higher than the total variable, isn't it? Because total cost is made up of total fixed cost and total variable cost. So total cost has to be the largest, the highest curve, followed by total variable cost, which is fluctuating, and the flat one, which is constant and stable, has to be your total fixed cost. Another thing to remember is your marginal cost curve always passes through, I'm going to draw this for you quickly. So this marginal cost curve always passes through the lowest point of ATC. So what it means is, on one side, ATC is going downwards. On the other side of MC, ATC is going upwards. So that's the point where MC passes, okay? It's not going to pass here. So this cannot be your MC. It has to pass through the point where the downward curve stops and the upward curve begins. All right, moving on. So what you saw just now were all short run cost curves. Now you're going to see in the long run how things look. If you look at your ATC, basically, let's say this is the long-term case, and you got one ATC, that's a U-shaped curve, and then you got another ATC and another ATC and another ATC and another ATC and another ATC. This is what your curve is going to look in the long run. Okay, so that's your long run ATC that is made up of many short run ATCs. So that's what the diagram shows. Remember, we would know if something is having economies of scale or diseconomies of scale based on your average total cost. So if your average total cost, okay, so that's the one given here. If your average total cost is going down, the part until which it goes down is called economies of scale. The part where it starts going up, that's when your average total cost starts increasing. You say you're suffering or you're facing diseconomies of scale. So economies of scale is where ATC is decreasing. Diseconomies of scale is where ATC is increasing. Moving on. So as I said, if it's going downwards, if your ATC is decreasing, it is economies of scale. If your ATC increases, it is diseconomies of scale. Moving to the next concept of consumer surplus, producer surplus. Remember, consumer surplus is the difference between the maximum that a consumer was willing to pay and what a consumer actually ended up paying. A producer's surplus is the difference between the minimum a producer was willing to receive and what the producer actually received. And we have a total surplus maximization when the market is at equilibrium point. So let's have a quick look at the diagram representation of a consumer surplus and a producer's surplus. So this is my demand curve and my supply curve as usual. Let's name it P, Q, demand, and supply. Let this, we know already this is the equilibrium point corresponding to which we're going to have equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Let's write that down as well. Equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So this part here, so this is your price line, isn't it? The area above this but below the demand curve is your consumer surplus, and the area below the price but above the supply curve is your producer's surplus. And these two are maximized, so you have a maximum total surplus. Consumer surplus plus producer's surplus gives us total surplus. This total surplus is maximized when the market is at equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. That's when the total surplus is max. However, things change when we have a ceiling and a floor, and that's what we are going to look at next. Let us look at a second. Let's start looking at a binding price ceiling and a non-binding price ceiling, for which we'll need to draw again. So let's have a quick look at the two situations and how the markets are affected as a result. I will be demonstrating a binding and a non-binding price ceiling. Let's understand what is a ceiling in the meantime while I'm drawing the basic structure. A ceiling is a cap, so it is a maximum. Okay, so a government could put a price ceiling or a price cap on something. It means you cannot go above that particular amount. Okay, now usually this is done to protect people. It is to protect local businesses as well, where a government would say, well, you cannot increase your price above a certain level. Okay, so that is to, let's say there is, let's say consumers feel they would be exploited and sellers would just go on and on and on increasing the prices. The government might come into play and say, well, no, you cannot increase the prices more than this. It is commonly seen in the cases of rental prices, where the government says for certain type of houses, for certain bedrooms, you cannot have the rental price above a certain amount. So that's a cap, that's a ceiling. Now, the question is, where is the ceiling placed? And that changes the whole game. Okay, that's what I'm going to show you. This is your regular P, Q, we know that. P and Q, that's price and quantity. We know this is demand curve and this is supply. Demand and supply, we know this is equilibrium price. I'm not drawing the equilibrium quantity at the moment because I don't need to show it at the moment. This is equilibrium price. All right, so now let's say the government puts a rental ceiling. Okay, it means the government says you cannot increase the price above a particular amount. Let's say this is one example of the ceiling and this is the other example of the ceiling. Remember, ceiling could be anywhere. Okay, we don't know where the ceiling is going to be. So this is a ceiling, also called a max or a cap. Okay, can't go above it. Just gonna write that here as well. So this is your ceiling, okay? The max or the cap price. So tell me something. If this is the ceiling and you cannot go above the ceiling, can the market go below? Yes, the market is allowed to go below the ceiling. So if the government puts a ceiling above the equilibrium price, the market will remain or eventually come back to the equilibrium price, and there'll be no effect on the consumer surplus or the producer surplus. Everyone's going to be happy. The price will be here. This entire region will continue to be consumer surplus. This region will continue to be your producer surplus. This is called a non-binding ceiling. Okay. However, this one here on the right side is called a binding ceiling. So binding ceiling is the one here on the right side. Why is it called binding? Because it is putting the market in a tough spot. Okay, it is binding. The market gets bounded at this particular price. See, this is a ceiling. It's a max. So can you go above it? No, you cannot go above it. So can we ever reach this point? No, we cannot reach this point. Why? Because this point is above the ceiling. It's not possible to go above the ceiling. So the market is stopped from reaching the equilibrium. And as a result of that, we have an issue. We have our consumer surplus and producer surplus affected. Check this out, how it's done. So from here, go up here, take it to the left, okay? And now I'm going to do the naming for everything. So this becomes the new decreased consumer surplus. Once again, I don't have time to go into very detail of all these. This is just a recap. So this tiny portion becomes the producer surplus. Because we are talking about rental property, we see that this is the quantity supplied, and this becomes the quantity demanded. It means more houses are required than the number of houses available. So we end up getting a shortage in the market. So this is a shortage in the market. Now, what happens if there is a shortage? There are a lot of people looking for houses, but there aren't enough houses. So those people are going to use up a lot of time, energy, and money, and it's going to affect the consumer and producer surplus, shown by the region that I've just highlighted. Apart from that, we'll also see that the market gets inefficient because an efficient market is at equilibrium. This market is not an efficient market. It's not in the best shape. So we lose another portion of the surplus, which is called the dead weight loss. So this is your dead weight loss. This is a loss because of the extra spending of time, energy, and money looking for houses. As a result, consumer surplus has shrunk and the producer surplus has shrunk. Plus, we have a shortage of housing as well. Now, in this situation where we have a shortage of housing and people are getting desperate, there will be a black market. That means there will be some people who are actually willing to pay illegally at a higher price just to get hold of the house. And that illegal high price is shown here. So this price is the illegal black market price, which is obviously illegal. Okay, so that's over here. So replay the video to see how I've drawn the diagram and where things have gone. So this shows a binding and a non-binding price ceiling. Moving on. Now we look at a binding and non-binding floor. So it's going to be, the diagrams are going to be similar. Let us understand what a floor is. A floor is a minimum. So you cannot go below the floor. Now, why would governments put a floor price? I can understand that the governments want to protect us from the rental property market's prices going too high. They want things to be affordable, and that's why they put a ceiling and they say you can't go above something. That I can understand. But why would the government say, say you cannot decrease the prices beyond a certain point? Why would they put a minimum? Now, many times that is to protect local businesses from overseas competition, because many overseas producers are able to lower the prices and local manufacturers just can't cope up. It is also seen in case of for casual and part-time jobs. It's seen for your minimum hourly wages. So to protect you as laborers, To protect you as workers, the government puts a minimum wage. So that is a minimum price as well. It tells the employers that you cannot pay someone below a particular level. So that's an example of a floor. Now let's understand and let's look at a price binding floor and a non-binding floor. Okay. Now we know these diagrams already. EP over here, EP over here. Remember one thing, just by looking at the location of the curve, you cannot tell if it's a ceiling or a floor. You need to know what it is, if it's minimum or a maximum. So here, this is a minimum. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. This is a minimum, and this is a minimum as well. So minimum means you cannot go below it. Let's have a look at this case here. Quickly write down demand and supply, demand, supply. Okay, so here you can't go below the minimum, right? But can you go above it? Yes. So will the market reach equilibrium price eventually? Yes, the market will reach this particular level and the market will be efficient. The market will be a happy market in this case, okay? Because your equilibrium price is above the minimum. The point of minimum is you can't go below it, okay? So this region below is not allowed, but the region above is allowed. So this is an example of a non-binding floor. Okay, now on the other side I'm going to show you a binding floor. That is if your minimum is placed above the market equilibrium. It means you cannot go below minimum. It means you cannot reach the equilibrium price. This price is not allowed because you cannot go below it. That raises a problem. If we cannot reach equilibrium, we are going to have a problem. And what is that problem? Your quantity demanded is here. Your quantity supplied is here. Let's write it down. This is my quantity demanded, and here is my quantity supplied. Now we are talking about minimum wage. We are talking about workers. So in this case, what we see is the quantity required for workers is less, but the number of people willing to work is higher. As a result, we have a surplus. But guess what this surplus is? It is the surplus of workers. In short, this region shows unemployment, increase in unemployment. Okay. What happens if we reach unemployment, if we have an increase in number of people not having jobs? There will be some people willing to work illegally at a very low price. And that is shown by this price over here. So this is the illegal minimum price someone is willing to work for. So I'll simply call it the black market price. That's not allowed. And we see that many times, if the job market is getting a hit, people end up working for a wage that is illegal. They just want a job. That's all matters to them. So that's the black market price. Now, we also know if there is unemployment, people are going to spend a lot of time, energy, and money looking for jobs. And that wastage of time, energy, and money affects their surpluses, which is shown by this region. Also, the market is inefficient. It does not reach efficient levels, as a result of which we have a dead weight loss, shown by the triangle. So the triangle is dead weight loss. This area is a loss due to looking for jobs, wastage of time, energy, and money. And this region is the surplus of workers or unemployed people. We are left with this tiny consumer surplus and this tiny producer surplus. So we have to bear in mind, if we are looking at a binding ceiling or a binding floor, both of them will affect the consumer surplus and producer surplus. A non-binding ceiling and non-binding floor will not affect the surpluses. So you can pause this video, look at the diagram again, replay and see how I was drawing it. But now it's time to move on to the next part. Let's have a look at the tax incidence, okay, in this particular case once again. So diagrams again. The good part about these videos is you can keep replaying the videos and see how I was drawing the diagrams. So what if we have a tax, if government imposes a tax on a certain product, what happens in that case? Let's have a quick look. Demand, supply, okay. We know this is equilibrium price. So let's just write everything P, Q, your equilibrium price. This is your consumer surplus, right? And this is your producer surplus. But things are about to change when there is an incidence of tax. So when there is a tax, it's going to affect our consumer and producer surplus. Want to see how? When there is a tax imposed, the supply curve will shift to the left. And this becomes your S after tax, okay? That's the tax incidence. Now, after the tax has been applied, this becomes the new equilibrium price. And as a result, a consumer surplus and producer surplus is affected. So this becomes the new consumer surplus. This region here becomes the new producer surplus. You can replay the video and check what the original size was. So it has clearly decreased. So our CS and PS has been affected. Also bear in mind, this tax, this amount of tax over here is the same over here, okay? So those two measure the same. So the shift in the curve is the same as the amount of tax. Now, this region in the middle is the total tax revenue. Okay? This region in the middle is the total tax revenue. And because our consumer surplus and producer surplus has decreased, we have a dead weight loss because of the tax. So this part is the dead weight loss. Consumer surplus decreased, producer surplus also decreased, and this region in the middle over here, this one, this box, rectangle that you can see, that is the tax revenue, okay? Now, out of the total tax revenue, the contribution from consumer surplus by the consumers is this bit, and the contribution by the producers from the producer surplus is this bit. It literally means, if I spread this out, okay, it literally means this is the total number of tax, right? This is the amount that the consumers are paying, but this is the amount that the producer is able to keep. Everything in the middle is your tax, and that contribution of the tax by consumers is this bit, and the one by producers is this bit. So once again, you can replay the diagram and see how the tax incidence affects consumer surplus and producer surplus both. From this diagram, you might have felt that consumers and producers are sharing the tax equally. However, that's not the case. So now I'm going to show you who shares the tax more. Let's draw the diagrams again. And interestingly, we would know who is sharing the tax more based on the elasticity. So here, elasticity comes back to our lives. So once again, let's draw a regular diagram. Let's always label it. This is P and this is Q. Now I'm deliberately going to show you guys how elasticity affects the tax contribution, okay? So I'm going to draw my demand curve as an inelastic curve. You know what's inelastic, right? So this is my inelastic demand curve. And I'm going to draw a regular or a more elastic supply curve. My elastic supply curve. now let's see what happens as a result of the tax. Ready? So the same format again. When there is a tax incidence, let me draw the first EEP that was here. Forgot to mention it. EP, that's the original one. Okay, so let's see what happens as a result of the tax. Supply curve is shifting to the left. This is my new supply after the tax. Okay, check out what's going on. Ready? So I'm going to draw this line here. Like I said, you can keep replaying the diagrams, okay, if you wish. Now, I'm just going to extend everything so it's easier to explain. So I'm just going to extend this here so it's easier to explain, okay? You don't have to extend it otherwise, but this will make my explanation easier. So I'm just extending these three. Okay, let's understand what's going on. This entire bit is the tax revenue, okay? This entire bit is the tax revenue. However, we know that this top part is the contribution by consumers, and this part is the contribution by the suppliers, right? So what do you see clearly in this case? The contribution by consumers towards the tax is more than the contribution by the suppliers, right? So the consumers contributed more. What kind of curve did the consumers have? The demand curve is the consumer's curve, isn't it? It was inelastic. So what is our conclusion? Whoever has the more inelastic curve, that particular group, so it could be consumer or the producer, will contribute more tax. The one that has more elastic curve will contribute less tax. Okay, so the elasticity actually helps us understand between the consumer and the seller who is contributing more and who is contributing less. Let's move on to the next topic. The next concept is about marginal social benefit and marginal social cost. So while I draw the diagram for you, which you can also follow, let us understand what's the meaning of a social benefit and a social cost. A cost to someone or a benefit to someone is a benefit and cost to that individual. But when we talk about social benefit or a social cost, we are talking about the benefit or the cost to the society based on your actions. So once again, let us write P and Q here. It means if I go to university, let's say I go to university, it definitely is going to benefit me, but that is my personal benefit. It's not a social benefit. If I want to talk about social benefit, I'll ask this question: what is the benefit to the society because I go to university? The other way, you could use the example of construction of roads. We know road construction has benefits, and at the moment we have this big tunnel link, the rail link that's going across Melbourne, which is good because in the future it's going to help us have better commute and we're going to be better connected. So that's the social benefit. But then we also know a lot of businesses that are close to the construction site had to shut down because people couldn't access those businesses because of the underground tunnel work. Now, it's a cost to those businesses. So what we see is because of a particular action, there are certain social benefits and there are certain social costs as well. So that is marginal social benefit and marginal social cost. The term marginal comes into play when we compare either the benefit or the cost with respect to the production of an extra unit. So if I have 10 buildings and I construct that one extra building, the 11th building, because of that one extra unit of manufacturing, because I'm producing that one additional unit, what is the extra benefit or the extra cost to the society? That is marginal social benefit and marginal social cost. So the cost or the benefit to the society as a result of producing one additional unit. So let us continue drawing the diagram. this is your regular demand curve, and here is your supply curve. When we are drawing these diagrams, your demand curve actually becomes the marginal social benefit curve. It represents the marginal social benefit, and your supply curve shows marginal social cost. Okay, now we know this point is where, so I'm going to plot this for you. This point is where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost, and we say that this output, this quantity, is an ideal quantity. That's a very efficient quantity. So we should produce where marginal social benefit and marginal social cost are equal. So some people will argue and say, well, why can't we produce here? Why can't I produce over here? Because at this point, have a look. If I draw this quantity, I will see that my marginal social benefit is more than my marginal social cost. That means if I produce at this point, there is more benefit to the society compared to the loss to the society. So why can't I produce here? Why should I produce where marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost? Now, we know one thing, we definitely should not produce here. Definitely shouldn't produce here. Why? If I bring this up, my marginal social cost is now more than marginal social benefit, isn't it? So here it's harmful. The benefit is less and the cost is more. So definitely let's not produce here. The argument is why produce here and why not produce where MSP is greater than MSC? And the answer is very simple. If you do so, you are underproducing. And for economic activity in the country and for economic growth and to create more employment and to have higher exports, we need to boost up our manufacturing and production. So we need to produce as much as possible, but that as much as possible should not be where we are harming the society. So what is the point where we should stop and we should say, well, that's the maximum production, which is good for economic activity and good for generating jobs and good for giving people options to choose from when they make their consumption options. What is that maximum where we can push ourselves, but then we got to say, hey, this is where we stop. And that is where marginal social benefit is equal to marginal social cost. Of course, you can produce here. There'll be more benefit than the cost, but in that case, our economy will be underproducing. Guys, now it's time to move to the next topic. Based on that, let me quickly talk to you about externalities. Externalities are basically spillover effects. So the effects of your actions on somebody else. I would say there is a positive externality. If there is a positive effect of my actions on someone, I will say there is a negative externality if there is a negative effect, spillover effect on a bystander due to my actions. Now, the externalities could be divided into 4 parts. Positive externality because of a consumer. So if I buy too much or if I keep buying a particular product, that buying decision, if that buying decision has a positive effect on the society, I would say it's a positive externality because of the action of a consumer. A good example here is education. So if you're consuming education, that is, if you're taking up a bachelor's degree and then a master's degree and then maybe an honors and a PhD, you're actually helping increase the human capital element of the society. So that consumption, the more it is, it's actually having a positive externality on the society. Then there's an example of a negative externality due to the actions of consumers. People who smoke, for example, the more you smoke, the more passive smoking takes place for people around you. It affects people in your family. It could affect your health. It could affect the healthcare system. It could also affect someone who is a bystander. So the more cigarettes that are smoked, it tends to have a negative externality. So this is an example of a negative externality due to the actions of a consumer. Similarly, there could be a positive externality because of the action of a seller. So when a producer manufactures a particular item that has a positive effect on the society, we say it's a positive externality due to actions of the sellers. In the current given time, vaccinations or even a face mask or hand sanitizers in the pandemic situation, the more they are produced, it's actually good for the society. So that's tend to have a positive externality due to the actions of a seller. But sometimes sellers could have a negative externality on the society as well. So if your production plant is causing pollution, air pollution, noise pollution, water pollution, then that production is actually having a negative externality on people around. So there are 4 types, as I said. Actions of a seller could have a positive and a negative externality, and actions of a consumer could have a positive and a negative externality. And now we are going to look at 4 diagrams demonstrating each, representing each and every category that I just mentioned. Now, since you have understood what a positive externality due to the actions of a consumer is, let us draw a diagram to understand how things work. Okay, so for starters, this is going to be my regular demand and supply diagram. Let me name it PQ. Let's draw the demand curve and the supply curve as well. And let us write what this means. Now, this means something. This is a private. I'll tell you what it is. This is a private cost or benefit. So your demand curve is showing the private cost or benefit for consumers, and your supply curve is showing a private cost or benefit to the sellers. Now, this is the private cost as a result of your own actions. This is not a cost to the society. Now, the next part is going to clarify everything straight away. Ready? When we are looking at a positive externality due to the actions of consumers, see, it is an action of a consumer. It's the demand curve that we're talking about, and it's having a positive externality. So when things are good, the demand curve will, or favorable, the demand curve is going to shift to the right. So I'm going to show a right shift in the demand curve, and this D is going to show the social cost or benefit. Okay, in this case it is a benefit. Why? Because we are looking at a positive externality. So it's not a social cost in this case. In this case it is a social benefit. Okay, now here comes the trick, not the tricky part, but an analysis of what we have just drawn. You see, previously when we were only concerned about the private benefit, this used to be the equilibrium price, and this used to be the equilibrium quantity. So I'll write equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. But when was this? This is when we are only considering the private benefit to us. The moment we consider the effect on the society, the social part, right? What becomes this point? Let's check out this point. Instead of calling this point equilibrium, I'm going to call it optimal. And I'll tell you the difference between the two very soon. So this becomes the optimal price, and this becomes the optimum or optimal quantity. Now, what's the difference? You see, equilibrium is good for private benefit, but if we are concerned about the benefit of the society, the optimal quantity is what is needed. So that is for the benefit of everyone, not just you. The optimum price should be different than equilibrium price. So what we realize, okay, to keep it very simple, when we just think about ourselves, we are underproducing and the prices are lower as well. if we are to think of the betterment of the entire society, we should be producing more and the prices could be higher, okay, for everyone's benefit. So this is how we analyze a positive externality due to the actions of consumers. Let us do the same thing for the other parts as well. However, I'll go faster in those those three scenarios. So let us draw it as quick as possible. Okay, I won't bother labeling it now. So this is your private benefit or cost. Now we are looking at negative externality. So I'm going to talk about cost. It's negative. So this is demand curve also showing private cost. This is the supply curve showing the private cost. We are looking at negative actions of consumers. So I'm going to shift the demand curve to the left. After shifting, what do I realize? This was the original equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, E, right? That's the black color. And the red color is showing the optimum or optimal price and optimal quantity. And this is negative. So in short, what does this particular diagram tell us? It tells us, so let me quickly write it. This is EP and this is OP. OP is optimum or optimal. So this is optimum quantity and this is equilibrium quantity. So what do we understand from this? The moment we consider the society, we realize that because this is negative consumption, we realize that it's actually beneficial for everyone if we consume less. So cigarettes, for example, we need to smoke less and the prices should be lesser as well. So these two things, if we are just looking at after ourselves, the prices will be higher and the output will be higher as well. But if we look at the society, the ideal price should be lower of overall commodities and the output should be lower as well. That means you should be smoking less cigarettes if we are looking after the society as a whole. But because we don't, the prices of cigarettes also go on increasing and we also end up causing harm, more and more harm to people around us. Now let's look at the positive externality due to the actions of the sellers. So you must have guessed by now how the diagram is going to look. But in this case, again, this is private. And I'm talking about positive externality. So this is a private benefit that I'm talking about. And now, because this is a positive externality of a seller, I have to shift my supply curve, okay, not my demand curve. So demand was when we were talking about actions of buyers, actions of consumers. Now we're looking at actions of sellers. So it's the supply curve that's going to be affected. It's a positive externality. So I'm going to shift the supply curve to the right. Okay, so this becomes the new supply curve, but this is for the society, okay? This was private, this was private, this was for the society, okay? So what do we see the moment we do so? This becomes the equilibrium, this becomes the optimal price and optimal quantity. So from supplier's point of view, what we realize is when things are good for the society, we should be keeping the prices lower, but we should be producing more. So if we are only looking after ourselves, if the sellers are only looking after themselves, they end up having a higher price and lower output. But in reality, if they were to concerned about everyone, the society, especially the actions that are good for the society, they should be lowering the price and increasing the output, because the optimal or optimum output is higher than the optimum, the equilibrium quantity, and the optimal price is lower than the equilibrium price. So this was equilibrium price, this was optimal price, it should be lower. This was equilibrium quantity, and this one is optimal quantity. So optimum or optimal is to do with the society, equilibrium is to do with the individual. So the last one, everyone, in this particular topic is a negative externality due to the actions of the seller. So any guesses how the diagram is going to look? I'm sure you have guessed it by now. Let's do this one nicely, as then we'll be moving on to a new topic. This is your demand curve and your supply curve. Now we're looking at the negative externality of sellers, right? So this is the cost, not the benefit. We also know this is equilibrium price, equilibrium quantity. You also know by now equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity are to do with the individual sellers, P and Q. Now what's going to happen? Guesses? As this video goes on, would you like to guess? It's a negative externality because of seller. So supply curve is shifting to the left. And now what happens as a result? We have a new optimum price and an optimum quantity. Optimum price and optimum quantity. We realize that the optimum quantity should be lesser, but the optimum price should be higher. It means if the sellers are only looking after themselves, especially when the externality, the effect on the society is negative, they are overproducing and they are keeping the prices low. Whereas if they really want to care about the society, the prices should be increased. These negative things should be kept a bit expensive, but the production should be lowered because the effects are actually negative on the society. It's not a positive effect. Doesn't mean we need to shut down because we need the economic activity to keep running in the country, but we need to decrease the production from equilibrium quantity till it reaches the optimum quantity. And because it's a negative externality, the prices should be higher, increased as well. So this was the concept of externalities, everyone. Let's move on to the next topic. So let us have a look at a market condition called perfect competition. Now, while I draw the diagram, I'll also give you the explanation side by side. So let's change the color. Okay, so what's a perfect competition? It's a type of a market where there are a lot of buyers, there are a lot of sellers. The products that are being sold are very identical and similar to each other. There is no barrier of entry. There is no barrier to exit the market. The buyers who are buying products in a perfect competition are aware of the pricing decisions. And the last part is, well, because there are a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers in the market selling similar products, the competition, well, the individual in this perfect competition is a price taker, not a price maker. So for this demonstration, we need to have two diagrams. One diagram that shows the market as the one on the left, and the other one that shows an individual. So let us write that down. This is an entire market, let's say for oranges, and let's say this is an oranges farmer. Okay, so on the left we got the entire perfect competition market for oranges, and on the right we got a particular seller in that market whom I said is a price taker, because this one person cannot influence the prices. The market influences the prices, and the person operating in it takes the price from the market, because the market has so much competition and it's all about a lot of buyers and sellers. So one person cannot really influence the entire market in this case. So when I said this person is a price taker, check this out. I'm quickly going to write a few more things. So this is your P and Q. This becomes equilibrium price. Same goes here, P and Q. Now let's have a look. Check this diagram, okay, how it's done. because this individual is a price taker, they are going to take price from the market. So see how I do it? I extend this here. Okay, this is your price because they've taken a price. They're a price taker. The price has come from this market. It is also perfectly elastic, and because it is perfectly elastic, this becomes your demand curve, which is also your average revenue curve, which is also equal to your marginal revenue curve. Okay, so all of these are equal because of the elastic nature, and because the individual is a price taker, they only take this particular price. This is also, and I'll show it to you later, but just bear in mind these things. Okay, your P is equal to D equal to AR equal to MR, and you can go back a few slides in the recording to understand how these curves should look and how they're actually calculated. The next part is my marginal cost curve. So this is my marginal cost curve, also my supply curve. Now remember a very important part, in a perfect competition, profit is maximized. So I'll write that down. Profit is maximized where MR is equal to MC, or in this case, where P is equal to MC, because your MR and P are the same, isn't it? So this is where profit maximization takes place. All right, so where is it? Can you spot it for me? This is MC and this is MR. So this point is the profit maximization point. It means the corresponding quantity is the profit maximizing output. So this is P for profit, M for maximizing, Q for output. So this is profit maximizing output. And this price here, the same price here, right, is your profit maximizing selling price. That's the price at which you're selling the product. Okay? Next, we don't know if this firm is making a profit or loss yet, unless and until we draw the ATC curve. So this is the ATC curve. It could either be above over here, or it could be passing below as well. So I'm showing you two examples on the same diagram. ATC1, ATC2, two different scenarios, okay? Now, let's check things out. I know what my profit maximizing selling price is, but do I know my cost price? I don't. I will know my cost price if I know how much I'm producing. So I'm producing at this quantity. That's not changing, okay? From here, if I go up to the ATC, that is the total cost. Isn't this the total cost? See? This is to do with the total cost. So this is average total cost, multiply that with quantity, it gives you the total cost. That's why I raise this line up here and then go on the side. This is going to give me my cost price for this particular situation. So in this situation where your ATC is above your marginal revenue, your cost price is more than the selling price. As a result, the firm is facing a loss, and that loss is shown by this region in the middle. Let's hop on to the second situation, the second scenario, where this was your ATC, okay? Now, I still know my selling price is still the same, but what is my cost price for the second scenario? For the second scenario, my cost price is as follows. Take the line from here. Why did I take it from here? Because the output is the same. So for that particular output, how much is it costing me? So this output meets the cost curve, the ATC over here. So my new, or in the second scenario, my cost price is here. For scenario number 2, for this ATC, my cost price is less than my selling price. As a result, this region is showing the profit that the firm makes. Now bear in mind, profit of course is good and loss is not good. I know that. But if the firm is making a loss, it doesn't necessarily mean the firm has to shut down. And this is very important. So a firm will make a shutdown decision, okay? A firm will make a shutdown decision only if the marginal revenue is less than average variable cost. So this is a situation where the firm will shut down. Not over here. This is a regular loss because your marginal revenue is less than, so I'll write it here, your marginal revenue is less than the average total cost. Okay, your marginal revenue is less than average total cost. So you could say your average revenue is less than average total cost. Regardless, it's all about total cost over here. And total cost could be because your startup cost, your fixed cost that was required at the beginning of your business was too high. So to overcome that initial cost, and if you bought a manufacturing unit for $2 million, it's going to take you a few years to overcome that particular cost. It's going to take you time to reach the break-even point. So at the beginning, your firm will be making a loss. It doesn't mean that you should shut down. You should shut down, or you probably will shut down if you're not able to make enough money to just fulfill or to bear the average variable cost. So average variable cost will be the cost, that is incurring for paying your employees, it's for gaining the raw materials. So if your revenue is not enough to pay your employees, it's not enough to buy raw materials for production, then it's a terrible situation where you might shut down. Okay, now we are going to pick one situation and then understand two different situations from it. So this was in the short run. I'm going to show you what happens in the long run. Okay, so let's move on to another diagram. In the long run, like I said, I'm going to pick one example, and from that example, you'll understand the broader situation. So the same diagram again, okay? This will be a recap for someone who hasn't understood the diagram. I'm going to show you a profit-making situation, okay? So on the left is the entire market. This is the equilibrium price in the market. Same situation, this individual on the right is a price taker, okay? They take the price. This is my MC, this was my MR. Let us start naming things. So P, Q, demand, supply, equilibrium price, price taker, P, Q. This is your marginal revenue. This is your marginal cost. This is the same as your demand. This is the same as your supply. This is where the profit is maximized. Remember, profit maximization is MR equal to MC. So this is where you'll have your profit maximizing output. This becomes your profit maximizing selling price, okay? Profit maximizing selling price. We don't know what the cost price is, for which we need our ATC. Of the ATC, I'm going to know what the cost price is. Check where this quantity meets ATC. It meets over here. So this becomes the cost price. Cost price is less than the selling price, hence the region in the middle is your profit. Now, my point is something else. See, if an individual, this was the market. Let me draw, just write it again in case you forget. So this is the entire market, and this is an individual from that market, okay, in a perfect competition. So you see, if individuals like this particular one in the long term, if more and more individuals start making a profit, this particular industry is going to become a very attractive industry because more sellers would want to come in because they are making a profit. As a result, the number of sellers in this market will increase. And what happens when number of sellers increase in the market? The supply curve will shift to the right. So let's have a look how the supply curve is going to shift to the right. So because more suppliers enter the market, the supply curve will now shift to the right. We have seen that in the demand and supply slide. So this is the new supply curve. It has shifted to the right. Now let's repeat everything. Let's repeat. This becomes the new equilibrium price, correct? This person is a price taker, isn't it? So this person, it takes the price. This becomes the new marginal revenue. This becomes the new selling price. Okay, this becomes the new equilibrium price. Now, what is the rule? Profit maximization happens where MR is equal to MC. This is my MC. This is my MR. So where are they meeting? My MR and MC are meeting here. Okay, so this becomes my new profit maximizing output. But tell me, what is, and this becomes my profit maximizing selling price, isn't it? This one here becomes profit maximizing selling price. I need to know the cost price, for which I need to see where this line is meeting ATC. Where is it meeting ATC? Oh, it's meeting at the same point, which means this is also my cost price. So what I'm seeing in this long run is my cost price and selling price are the same. As a result, in the long run, okay, so we're looking at long run, a perfect competition. So in a perfect competition, in the long run, there are zero economic profits. But bear in mind, we are looking at economic profit, not an accounting profit. So an economic profit also considers an opportunity cost. So whether an individual makes a profit in the short run or a loss in the short run, in the long run, if they are operating in a perfect competition, they are going to make a zero economic profit. So this was with perfect competition. Now let's move on to the last part, which is monopoly. Now bear in mind there are different types of markets, and we don't need to know each and every market for this particular subject. We have a monopoly, which is just one seller in the market. And because it's just one seller in the market, there are barriers to entry and there are barriers to exit as well. Also, these are very highly protected industries by the government, and that's another reason why the barriers exist. If it's only one person, one seller, one company for that particular product in the market, now that market could be a country, it could be a city, a state, or a suburb as well. But if it's just one seller for that particular product in that market, we say it is a monopoly. Or a seller who is operating in a monopoly is called a monopolist. Okay, so a monopolist, because they are just one, they are the price, they are the market. The individual and the market is one and the same, and that's why we don't need two different diagrams. It's one combined diagram for both. Also, this particular individual is a price maker because they are the market. They don't have to be influenced by market prices. They themselves are the market and they influence the prices. So they are a price maker, not a price taker. As a result, a demand curve and a marginal revenue curve will be split into two. So now we have two curves instead of one. One is your marginal revenue, and the other one is your demand curve. We will have a marginal cost curve as it is, which is also our supply curve. Now let's have a look what happens in this market. Once again, profit maximization takes place where MR is equal to MC, which is this point over here, and that point gives us the profit maximizing output. So this is profit maximizing output. But what is the selling price? The selling price will come off the demand curve over here. So that becomes the profit maximizing selling price right here. Okay, do we know whether this is making a profit or a loss? We don't know. We need to know the ATC to understand if it's making profit or loss. So let me draw one ATC here, and I'll draw another ATC here. So the quantity remains the same, but ATC will tell us the cost price. So let's extend this up to the ATC. And we understand for situation 1, for scenario 1, this is the cost price. For scenario 2, this is where ATC meets the profit maximizing output. Hence, for the second part, second scenario, this becomes the cost price. So in the first situation, let's call it 1 and 2. In the first situation, the cost price is more than the selling price, so we have a loss. So although it's a monopoly, it's making a loss. In the second situation, the cost price is less than the selling price because ATC was passing below the MR and the demand curve, so we are having a profit. So this is a profit in scenario 2. This is a loss in scenario 1. This becomes profit maximizing output, and we have seen how things work in a monopoly. Now, there are other markets as well. Apart from monopoly, you got duopoly, which has 2 sellers. We got oligopoly, which has got a few sellers. Already shown you what a perfect competition is. There is one more called monopolistic competition. Now, a monopolist and a monopolistic competition is different. A monopolist is one that operates in a monopoly, whereas a monopolistic competition is almost similar to perfect competition with one difference. And that difference is that the products are not entirely identical, they're slightly different, and the competition is not purely based on price, it is based on product differentiation. So for a perfect competition, products were identical to each other, very similar, and the main basis of competition was price. Whereas in the case of a monopolistic competition, there are a lot of buyers and sellers, but the products are slightly different, and the point of competition is mainly product differentiation, not just the selling price alone. But now let's focus back to this diagram, which was a monopoly. We have seen where and when and how a monopolist makes a profit and makes a loss, and what is a profit maximizing output. The problem in a monopoly, though, is if you're operating a monopoly, if an economy has a monopoly in a particular sector, that sector becomes inefficient. And now I'm going to show you why it's better to have a perfect competition with regards to efficiency in the market, and why a monopolist will give rise to inefficiency in a market where you have a monopoly. So let's look at another diagram. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a monopoly and a market, not an individual, but a market for perfect competition on the same diagram. So get ready. This is my demand curve. This is the supply curve. Okay, now if this was a perfect competition, a market for perfect competition, tell me what would the equilibrium quantity and equilibrium price be? It would be this point, isn't it? So from this point, we would get an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity, correct? So this is if this we are looking at the market for perfect competition. But now let me show you what happens when we have a monopoly. Ready? You know, for a monopoly there was one major difference. The marginal revenue was split from the demand curve, wasn't it? So this is my marginal revenue in case of a monopoly, right? This is the marginal revenue. We also know in a monopoly, the profit maximization takes place where MR is meeting MC. So I need to draw my MC as well, isn't it? So let me draw my MC. Hang on. My supply curve is the MC, isn't it? So I don't have to draw another MC. Remember on the diagram, monopoly diagram, this was the demand curve, this was the marginal revenue curve, and this was your MC, which was also equal to supply. So I don't need to draw another MC. It's already given to me. So what do I have? I got my MC, I got my MR. I already know if it was a perfect competition, this would be EP and EQ, EP and EQ, right? So what's happening in case of a monopoly? Where is profit maximization happening? Where MR is equal to MC, correct guys? Remember that formula that I told you, or not formula, main point to remember, profit maximization happens where MR is equal to MC. So that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'll check where MR is equal to MC. It's here. This is where MR is equal to MC. So for a monopolist, what is a profit maximizing output? It's here. Profit maximizing output. Bear in mind the red color part is for a monopolist. Okay, the black one, EQ, is for a perfect competition. But do we know where the monopolist is selling? What's the selling price? It's off the demand curve. So bring this up to the demand curve. Draw it like this. And what you get is your selling price, or profit maximizing selling price. For whom? For a monopolist. Now, this gives a very good indication to us. There are two things that we can clearly see. If we have a monopoly, the prices are going to be higher than what they could have been in a perfect competition. We will also see that the quantity that a monopolist will provide to us will be lesser than that we would have gotten if we had a perfect competition. So because we have just one seller instead of a nice healthy competition, what is happening? The prices are higher, but the quantity offered to us is lower. So we have these two major problems. We also, as a result of this problem, see that our consumer surplus decreases, our producer surplus decreases, and guess what? We end up with a dead weight loss. So in conclusion, if you have a monopoly, prices will be higher, quantity will be lesser, there will be a loss to consumer surplus and producer surplus. Those two surpluses, which otherwise would have been in this region. I'll show you the quick region as well. So otherwise, if we had a perfect competition, the consumer surplus would have been this big. Instead, it's now this tiny part, isn't it? So that's one problem. And the second problem is our producer surplus could have been this much if we had a perfect competition. Instead, it is only this red region here. That's the producer surplus. So we lose those two, and we have a dead weight loss as well. So it's better to have a perfect competition compared to a monopoly, because a monopolist is inefficient and also affects our welfare. So now we are going to move to one last part. Are you ready? So this is about the type of goods. Rival goods, excludable goods, and based on those two, we categorize them as private goods, public goods, common goods, and club goods. So let us look at this part together and conclude our revision lecture. So any good is said to be rival in nature if we have to compete for it. So if it's limited, for example, if you want to book a seat, for a nice seat at the front, if your favorite band is performing it, let's say Katy Perry, a singer, is coming to Melbourne and you want the seat right at the front, then there's going to be a rivalry, isn't it? Many people are going to jump on to the online booking, and they're going to go, on a first come first basis. Of course, you should be able to afford the prices, the ticket cost as well, but you'll try to book those prime spots. Or let's take university, especially when we had in-class face-to-face lectures. There were different seminars that open up on Allocate Plus, and students jump on, and they try to book those seminars, those tutorials or lectures that suit their timetable. So that is called rivalry. So they could be, that's the term rival. Okay, when you're competing for the particular product. Excludable or excludability literally means that you have to pay for something, or there could be rules and regulations that could stop you from accessing that good. So once again, if I want to go for a concert, I have to pay for it. I can't just gate crash and entering. That will be illegal. So the fact that I have to pay for a concert becomes the point of excludability. It means I will be excluded if I don't pay. So that's one. The other one could be terms and conditions. Sometimes in the Melbourne CBD, if you go clubbing, some clubs say, well, you have to be suited and you need to have leather shoes or formal shoes or at least a tie. Otherwise, there is no entry. So that is a point of excludability again. If you don't do so, you will be excluded. And so now what is being rival and what is being excludable. Based on those, we have these 4 types of main goods that you need to know. So private goods are both rival and excludable. Public goods are not rival, not excludable. Common goods are rival, so you got to compete for them, but they're not excludable. Okay, and club goods are excludable, so there could be terms and conditions, or you may have to pay for them, but they are not rival, so you can get them anytime. You don't have to compete for them. So with that, I like to conclude this particular revision lecture. Hope you found it useful. Make sure that you go through different book chapters, you read the material made available to you on Moodle and LMS, you go through the previous recorded lectures as well, and then use this particular lecture as a quick recap, a good summary of the entire content for our subject. So hope it was useful, and I wish everyone all the best. So thank you very much.